Imagine you are standing on the deck of a state-of-the-art starship. You're, millions of miles from home, running a routine, completely by-the-book weapons test.
Just a normal Tuesday, basically.
Right. You're relaxed, the crew is relaxed, and then, in a fraction of a second, an ancient automated defense field attack.
But out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. Why? Because your defensive shields just happen to be down for the test. There's no warning. There is no villain twirling a mustache on the view screen.
Right. No grand monologue.
Exactly. It is just a deadly, senseless hazard left over from some forgotten era. And the deck lurches, bulkheads rupture, the air just fills with the smell of burning uranium, the ultra-hard metal the ship's hull is built from, and in an instant, 3 people are dead.
It is the ultimate shock to the system. The sheer suddenness of an event like that just completely strips away every illusion of safety a person holds on to.
And that is exactly what happened to the crew of the USS Arawyn. But today, we are taking a deep dive into a stack of personal logs and records from the Arawyn to look at something much quieter than the battle itself.
Yeah, the stuff that doesn't make the official reports.
Right. We are looking at the immediate raw aftermath. We're going to explore how people from the captain sitting in the center seat all the way down to the junior engineers in the guts of the ship put themselves back together when their sense of security has just been completely shattered.
Which is fascinating because the adrenaline of a crisis is actually the easy part.
Really? The easy part?
I mean, biologically speaking, yes. When the alarms are blaring, biology takes over. You fight, you fix, you survive. The true psychological crucible for any group of people is the deafening silence that follows.
Wow.
Yeah, it's those hours and days after the threat is gone, when the adrenaline finally fades, and they are forced to actually process the trauma of what they just lived through.
And we see that deafening silence so clearly with the ship's commanding officer, right, Captain Sabrina Corbin. Reading the log detailing her in her quarters right before the funeral, I mean, the stillness is heady.
It's palpable.
Yeah. There's a cup of tea on her desk that has gone completely cold. She's moving with this hyper-precise, almost robotic control. And her chief petty officer, a man named Merrick, is silently helping her into her dress whites.
No words exchanged.
None.
Oh.
They aren't speaking at all. He's just adjusting the jacket, offering this steady, undemanding presence. She's entirely isolated by her rank, just locked in her own head.
Because she is measuring the exact emotional weight of the words she's about to say to her crew, she knows the structural load those words have to carry.
That makes sense.
Right. If she says too much or if she breaks down, it terrifies a crew that is already incredibly shaken. But if she says too little, it feels cold and insufficient.
And she seems to find that agonizing balance down in the shuttle bay. They've actually taken 3 photon torpedo casings, the heavy munitions the ship normally fires, and repurposed them as makeshift caskets draped in Starfleet flags.
Which is such a striking visual.
It really is. But when Captain Corbin speaks, she doesn't focus on the horror of the attack or, how they died. She focuses entirely on how they lived.
Because she's taking these 3 individuals out of the chaotic context of the tragedy and returning them to their humanity. It's a way of reclaiming their identities from the sheer senselessness of the event.
Like when she talks about Petty Officer Melinda Willman, who used to bring music into the quiet spaces of the ship and always made sure people had what they needed before they even asked.
Right.
And she talks about Senior Petty Officer Daria Avigard from engineering, this energetic officer who never turned down a dance night, but who died because she stayed right at her post when the ship's power systems were failing.
She held the line.
Exactly. And then Ensign Del Barlark, a quiet guy who spent his off-duty time volunteering for the ship's feline welfare group, just cleaning enclosures and sitting with animals that needed patience.
By highlighting those specific traits, the music, the dancing, the quiet care for the cats, Corbin is giving the crew a framework for their grief. It acts as a psychological anchor.
Oh, I like that. A psychological anchor.
Yeah, she's reminding them that the ship is diminished by their absence, yes, but more importantly, it's stronger because of their presence.
But the toll it takes on her is so heavy. Because later on, we see her take a private, long-distance subspace call from a woman named Aunt Judith, who is calling from the resort world of Risa.
The contrast there is completely jarring.
Completely. Judith is lounging in the sun with a drink, surrounded by the chaos of a cultural festival and a surf competition, while Corbin is encased in the sterile, cold reality of a damaged starship.
Right.
And Judith gently but firmly pushes Corbin to drop her walls. She tells her, you don't have to carry all of them alone.
And Corbin's response shows us exactly where her headspace is at. She's sitting there, holding her cat, Ptolemy, seeking just some small physical comfort, but she outright refuses to break.
Yeah.
She looks at Judith and essentially says, if I don't carry them, who will? Corbin fundamentally believes that she has to be the ship's unyielding foundation. If she shows even a crack, she believes the whole structure fails.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I look at Captain Corbin locking her emotions away, containing everything, like she's one of the physical metal bulkheads holding the ship together. And I have to ask, is this actually healthy leadership?
That's the big question.
Like, if she cracks, does the morale of the ship actually depressurize? Or is this just a trauma response disguised as duty?
Honestly, it's likely a bit of both, but it's leaning heavily toward a trauma response. In the immediate aftermath of a crisis, sure, crew does need a fixed point to orient themselves around.
Someone to look to.
Exactly. But long-term, compartmentalizing trauma to that degree is corrosive. Aunt Judith points it out when she notices Corbin speaking these clipped, perfectly measured sentences. Corbin is trying to organize her grief the way she might organize a shift schedule or a tactical plan.
Wow. Yeah.
The psychological mechanism she's using is intellectualization, separating the raw emotion from the event. But human emotions simply do not comply with that kind of rigid structure. The more you compress them, well, the more explosive the eventual release.
And that rigid intellectualization is just a stark contrast to someone who is entirely failing to organize his grief. Lieutenant J.G. Ryan Collingway.
Oh, Collingway.
Yeah, I have to admit, I really struggled to understand Collingway's behavior in these logs at first. He's a junior engineer, a logic guy, right? But he's living on caffeine, eating bacon and eggs down in engineering, and just flat out refusing to sleep.
It looks completely irrational from the outside.
Totally. He even dodged his mandatory therapy sessions with the ship's counselor, Dr. Emerson, 3 times. Why would a highly logical person act so illogically? Doesn't he know that sleep deprivation makes him mathematically more likely to make a fatal error?
Logically, he absolutely does know that. But his behavior isn't being driven by logic right now. It's being driven by a desperate need for control.
Ah.
Collingway is exhibiting textbook avoidance. He's burying himself in repairs because fixing a blown power conduit is a problem with a definitive logical solution.
Right, you replace the part and it works.
Exactly. Processing the fact that he almost died and that his friends actually did die is not solvable like that. When you experience a life-threatening event, the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, goes into absolute overdrive. For Collingway, going to sleep means relinquishing control, which his amygdala is screaming at him is just too dangerous to do right now.
And when Dr. Emerson finally corners him, we find out the specific twist to his survivor's guilt. Collingway was only in a position to jumpstart the warp core and save the ship because of an administrative error.
That detail is so crucial.
It's wild. The previous acting chief engineer transferred off, and the new chief hadn't bothered to update the personnel files yet. So Collingway still had the master command codes.
Think about the massive cognitive dissonance that creates for him. The human brain requires a narrative to make sense of the world. It wants a reason why he survived when others didn't.
Right. Was he smarter? Was he faster?
No. The only reason is a misplaced piece of digital paperwork. And the human mind utterly rejects that because paperwork cannot carry the moral weight of human life. He saved the ship, but he feels like a total imposter.
And beneath that guilt is just this raw anger at the utter senselessness of the attack. During the session, he tells Dr. Emerson that if it was an enemy with a grudge, that would at least make sense.
Right, a villain you can fight.
Exactly. But it was just an unthinking, ancient defense grid. And to make it even crazier, the executive officer, Commander Battenberg, discovers that the defense field actually stopped attacking because it eventually recognized the Arawyn's unique Starfleet shield harmonics.
Which is such a chilling detail.
It recognized their specific defensive energy frequency and essentially said, "Oh, you're friendly, my mistake," after killing 3 people.
And that implies a level of systemic hazard in the universe that you simply cannot prepare for. Why would an ancient, forgotten weapon recognize modern Starfleet frequencies? It means the danger isn't just random, it's woven into the very environment they operate in.
Yeah.
Dr. Emerson addresses this perfectly. She describes this kind of trauma as, having the rug pulled out from under you. You believe you are standing on solid ground, and a second later, you're on the floor with broken bones.
And Collingway's response to that metaphor is just crushing. He tells her there is no process to heal from that. He just will never, ever trust the rug again.
He's fundamentally changed.
Yeah. He refuses to hand over his acting command codes until they are safely docked at Starbase 369. Here's where it gets really interesting. Though looking at his hypervigilance refusing to sleep, holding on to those command codes with a white-knuckled grip, practically living in engineering, he says he has no process. But isn't this hypervigilance its own kind of coping process?
It is, absolutely, but it's a maladaptive one. Hypervigilance gives him the illusion of control. Collingway feels that the universe is fundamentally chaotic and unsafe, so he is trying to exert absolute control over his immediate, tiny environment.
Right.
If he watches the engine core constantly, he believes he can prevent the next disaster. It's his brain's way of trying to rewrite the narrative from, I am a helpless victim of a senseless universe, to, I am the indispensable protector of this ship.
And that desperate need to grip the wheel tighter is exactly what two other senior officers are sitting in the dark trying to unlearn.
Yes, the scene in 10 forward.
It's this profound, quiet log. They're in 10 forward, the ship's lounge. It's low light, the stars are just streaking by at warp, and we have Tactical Officer Grayson McKinney and Medical Officer Claire Dunross sitting in a booth.
Just decompressing.
Yeah. McKinney has bartered for a bottle of Saurian brandy, which they are drinking like scotch, by the way. And they're just sitting in the weight of the aftermath, actively deconstructing what control actually means.
And it's an important moment because it takes two officers whose entire careers are built on managing risk, one through tactical defense, the other through medical diagnostics, and puts them in a space where they are forced to drop their professional armor.
Right.
Both of their disciplines are fundamentally about imposing order on chaos.
So McKinney tells this incredible story about his father, who was this rigid Starfleet admiral and basically managed people like assets. His father had McKinney's whole summer mapped out with intense leadership seminars when he was just 17.
Way too much pressure.
Oh, totally. But his mother intervened and sent him to a ranch in Montana to escape it. And one morning, his uncle takes him out to a ridge overlooking a valley, and they watch a herd of bison.
I love this story.
It's so good. When a calf wanders away from the herd, testing the boundaries, the massive bull doesn't charge over and force it back. The bull just stands up and acts as a visible boundary until the calf realizes it wandered too far and returns on its own.
And the lesson the uncle imparts to McKinney right there is the thesis of their whole conversation. Control demands compliance. Protection allows for choice.
Such a powerful line.
Right. Control is what McKinney's father did, forcing rigid, predetermined outcomes. Protection is holding a space safe enough for others to operate within. And McKinney tells Dunross that he actually carries a smooth river stone from that day in Montana in his pocket.
As a reminder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a physical grounding tool to remind himself of the kind of leader he wants to be. He wants to be the bull on the ridge, not the admiral micromanaging the crew.
But then Dunross counters with a dark memory of her own, which really shows she understands the terrible cost of prioritizing the mission over the individual. She tells McKinney about a time she prioritized efficiency over caution.
A medical call.
Yeah, she cleared a young ensign named Markovich for a heavy repair duty, even though he had ambiguous symptoms, and the intense physical exertion triggered a latent, undetectable neurological condition called Irumodic syndrome.
Oh, that's devastating.
The sudden onset caused permanent brain damage, and she has to carry that guilt forever.
And you have to remember, Dunross is trapped by her own background here. Her father runs a massive corporate empire where everything is about efficiency and eliminating variables. She realizes that by clearing that ensign, she made the exact kind of cold corporate calculation her father would make.
She treated him like a variable.
Right. She treated a human being like a variable to be optimized.
And to fight against that instinct, she reveals that she rides competitive dressage in the ship's holodeck with a virtual horse named Finnegan.
Which requires so much subtle communication.
Exactly. She says she practices partnership over precision. It's her way of rejecting her father's suffocating control, because dressage is entirely built on invisible communication and trust between rider and horse, not force. And just like McKinney, she reaches into her pocket and pulls out her own stone, a dark piece of granite set with a deep red garnet.
They both have their physical anchors.
Yeah. But looking at these two, Dunross with her medical mindset, McKinney with his tactical assessments, I wonder about these stones. Are they actually reminders of the leaders they want to be? Or are they just physical manifestations of the guilt they carry around in their pockets? Like, aren't they just punishing themselves?
It's a fair question, but no, it's not punishment. It's anchoring. A stone has literal weight. For Dunross, the garnet is a reminder of her failure with Ensign Markovich. For McKinney, his Riverstone is a reminder of his fear of becoming his father.
Okay, I see.
The psychological mechanism here is externalization. By carrying a physical object, they take the abstract, overwhelming weight of their guilt and turn it into something tangible that they can actually manage.
That makes a lot of sense.
They are refusing to let themselves off the hook, yes, but they're using the weight of their past mistakes to anchor their future intentions. They're choosing to carry the scars rather than, just numb themselves to them.
Speaking of physical scars, these private moments of vulnerability lead us to the most public display of it down in main engineering, because Chief Engineer Elias Harlan has finally had enough of sickbay.
Oh, Harlan's return is incredible.
It's amazing. He was severely injured in the blast, requiring major neurological repair.
And his recovery is really a physical mirror of the psychological recovery happening across the rest of the ship.
Right. He essentially bullies the Vulcan doctor, Jork, into letting him leave. And the visual of him descending into main engineering is just so striking. The room still smells like burned uranium. There's literally a jagged hole in the wall.
It's a war zone.
Yeah. And here comes the chief engineer wearing a blue bathrobe, slippers, and leaning on an elegant cane because his motor coordination is still shot.
Think about the contrast with Captain Corbin here.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Corbin put on her formal dress whites to project invulnerability, right? She hid her damage. Harlan shows up in slippers, entirely vulnerable, stripped of all the normal trappings of authority.
The crew's reaction is immediate. One chief petty officer sees him, starts clapping, and suddenly the entire engineering deck is giving him a spontaneous, rolling, standing ovation.
Such a cathartic moment.
They don't see a broken man in a bathrobe. They see survival. They see their chief standing on his own 2 feet. And it's this exact moment that finally allows our exhausted Lieutenant Collingway to take a breath and realize it's going to be okay.
The tension just breaks.
So what does this all mean? Because I have to push back on this a little bit. I look at Harlan showing up to engineering in a bathrobe, and it feels like seeing your high school principal in their pajamas at the grocery store.
It's jarring for sure.
It entirely shatters the illusion of authority. Does Harlan going down there actually help the crew heal? Or is he just serving his own selfish need to escape the helplessness of a hospital bed?
Oh, he is absolutely serving his own need to feel useful again. There's no doubt about that. But paradoxically, his visible vulnerability is the exact mechanism the crew needs to heal in that moment.
How so?
If he had waited until he was fully healed, returning in a crisp uniform and projecting perfect strength, he would have been enforcing an impossible standard. He'd be telling the crew implicitly, we only show up when we are unbroken.
Oh, I see.
By showing up battered, leaning on a cane, he gives the crew unspoken permission to be battered themselves. He embodies the reality of their situation. They are hurt, they are scarred, but they are still standing.
That's a great point. It's a catalyst for the rest of the crew to start reestablishing their own baseline.
Yeah.
And you see it everywhere in the logs, and everyone has a completely different method.
Everybody copes differently.
Exactly. The executive officer, Commander Battenberg, is dealing with severe PTSD nightmares of an exploding planet from a previous mission, and she grounds herself by just petting her cat, Mittens.
Which is a brilliant mechanism, tactile grounding. When the brain is flashing back to a past trauma, physical sensation like the rhythmic petting of an animal forces the nervous system to recognize that it is in the present safe moment.
And then there's Counselor Miller, the ship's therapist. The guy whose job it is to help everyone else is sitting in mess hall eating eggs and reading medical first responder tutorials. A therapist reading paramedic guides. But it makes sense when you think about it.
It absolutely makes sense. In a crisis, the physical fixers, the medics, the engineers, they have immediate purpose.
They know what to do.
Right. But the psychological fixers have to wait for the dust to settle. By reading those manuals, Miller is regaining a sense of physical agency. He's actively preparing, which rewires his brain away from helplessness and toward capability.
If we pull all of these logs together, a very clear picture emerges. Surviving the immediate crisis, the exploding consoles, the collapsing bulkheads, that is just physics, adrenaline, and engineering.
The easy part.
The easy part. But surviving the aftermath requires immense human vulnerability. Healing is not a standard issue protocol that you can just download. It is a messy, custom-built process.
Yeah. There is no single right way to connect pieces back together. For Captain Corbin, it's maintaining unyielding stoicism to protect her crew, even if it actively hurts her.
Right.
For Collingway, it's channeling his survivor's guilt into hypervigilance until he finally sees his chief engineer survive. For McKinney and Dunross, it's trading stones in the dark and acknowledging their flaws.
Which brings us right back to you, listening to this deep dive. You might not be dodging ancient automated defense fields in the depths of space, but we all experience moments where the rug is entirely pulled out from under us.
Absolutely. We all have those
A
moments.
sudden loss, a massive career failure, a health crisis that just comes out of nowhere. In those moments of deafening silence that follow the shock, how you choose to carry the stones of your past mistakes, whether you choose to navigate your life with rigid control or open protection, defines how you will survive your own aftermath.
It's all about how you carry the weight.
And there is one final lingering image from the Arawyn to leave you with. Later that sleepless night, after seeing Commander Harlan in his bathrobe, Lieutenant Collingway knocks something off his bedside table. He looks down, and it's his old, colorful Starfleet recruitment brochure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the one that promised him adventure and purpose and exploration, but conveniently left out the trauma, the unthinking defense grins, and the sudden loss of friends. And it leaves us with this thought to mull over. When the reality of your life entirely shatters the idealized brochure you were sold, do you demand a refund, or do you start writing your own brochure?